Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Evergreen State College Tacoma campus. We are here for our virtual lecture series, excited about our keynote speaker. And here to introduce our keynote speaker is Dr. Anthony Zaragoza. Good evening, Dr. Zaragoza.
Thank you so much, Dean Arunga, and thank you for setting up this amazing virtual lecture series. We appreciate this as a service not only to the campus learning community, but to the community outside. And it's a wonderful chance to hear from some great people. So thank you so much. I want to welcome everybody. I see some folks that we know. Good to see you, Punani. Good to see you, Teresa. Candy Bauman, alum of Evergreen. Good to be with you. Thank you for coming back and seeing us. Candy was actually on the hiring committee that was part of bringing me to Evergreen 18 years ago. Ted Mims, good to see you. Mia, good to see you and family. Tara, good to see you too. And David and Camila and Beth, welcome. It is such an honor to be with you tonight at the virtual lecture series. We are doing this in conjunction with our Evergreen Tacoma class, what we know, and I'll put the flyer for our panels into the chat. This is a class that has folks gathering the knowledge from their lives and writing about it and choosing pieces of that writing to dig deeper and deeper into. And we're learning a lot from our texts, but also from each other and deepening our knowledge as we go. So this is in conjunction with the Share Knowledge panels that we'll have tomorrow. The panel link is in the chat. Thank you all so much for being with us. I want to thank particularly John Hausdorfer of the Resilience Studies Consortium. I'll put the link to the RSC in the chat in just a bit. Made this possible for us tonight at this event hosted by Evergreen Tacoma. I want to now introduce our very special guest. We have with us tonight, sharing his knowledge, Dr. John Francis, an environmentalist known the world over as the Planetwalker. Dr. Francis will share his life of activism that includes his choice to stop using motorized vehicles and begin walking wherever he went, and a vow of silence that lasted 17 years. Today, Dr. Francis is a visiting associate professor at the Gaylord Nelson Institute for Environmental Studies at University of Wisconsin-Madison, where he is teaching both graduate and undergraduate seminars in environmental studies. Evergreen Learning Community, Evergreen Tacoma, please help me welcome John Francis. Thank you, Dr. John.
Well, thank you very much, Anthony, and I want to thank everybody for having me here and being here. Can everybody hear me fine? Okay, all right. It's really an honor to be virtually at this campus. The history of the campus and the people who are part of the campus are inspirational to me because on my journey, I had the good fortune of being able to get a formal education, but also the informal education. And it's very difficult to find a blend of both formal and informal education. And I think that your campus embodies that. Things that are formally and informal, the road and the classroom, and what life is, and what we can we learn from each other. And so I want to start off my visit with you with some music from the road, and it's the banjo that I carried with me across the United States and the length of South America, and the tune I'm playing, it will be what I learned from the road. So um, it's life celebration. Well, thanks you for being here. And I always begin my talks and speaking by thanking my audience for being here, because without you, this would not be possible. Without you, there would be no communication. And I'm going to speak a little bit, but I hope that we really have a conversation. My journey began, oh, back in 1971 after seeing an oil spill. And I was not really interested in the environment. It was something that I thought about briefly. Oh, you know, with recycling cans. I lived in the Bay Area of San Francisco, Point Reyes and Inverness. And so I really hadn't been thinking very much about environment. And I want to convey to you this this journey that I was put upon, I was put on um, because of the environment. And I didn't see it. I just didn't see it. It just came out of somewhere, and it changed my life. It changed my life. And I'm hoping that what this journey is that I can share with you, um, uh, it can get into you, it can change your life. I mean, um, I have to say, when I started my journey, I thought about what is environment? What's environment? It's about clean air, it's about pollution. And the first thing that I saw that really impacted me about the environment was this collision of two oil tankers in San Francisco Bay, 1971. And and that prompted me to say to my girlfriend, who I was with at the time, I said, I said, Jean, we have to do something about this. This is really terrible. And she said, we could do something, like we could clean the birds. And I said, no, we have to do more than that. We have to do more than clean the birds. And she said, well, like, John, what do you have in mind? And I said, I want to stop riding in cars because the oil is from the oil you see that we're using is really what's washing up on the shore. And she kind of laughed at me and she said, John, we don't have enough money to do that. And can you imagine that you don't have enough money to not ride in a car? It should be it's like the other way around. It's like you don't have enough money to get a car. You don't have enough money to pay for gas. But we were talking about we didn't have enough money that we could walk, that we could do the simplest thing. And I believed her. I said, "Oh, you're probably right." And it wasn't until a friend's death convinced me that we only have the moment, this moment that we're sharing right now. This is all we have. We don't have anything like, well, we'll wait until the money comes and then we can afford it. Well, we don't know if the money will ever come. We don't know if we're going to get up tomorrow. We like to think we know, and hopefully we will all be able to get up tomorrow. But because this person died, it struck me that we don't really have a guarantee for anything. And this person was a deputy sheriff. He was a deputy sheriff, and he lived in my village, and he was always talking to Jean about pulling up the plants that grew in her yard. But now that's in California and Washington. It's, those plants are, it's legal to keep those plants. But he was like really giving Jean a hard time. And so when he was out on his boat with his family, a south wind came and flipped the boat over, and he perished. His family was saved. And it was that incident that prompted Jean and I to walk to make our first walk, a big walk to San Anselmo. It was only 20 miles to hear the Youngbloods play. It was a music group, and they were playing, "Come on, people, smile on your brother. Everybody get together. Gotta love." You don't want to hear me sing that. I'm just going to tell you the words. But it was on that walk that I said to my friend Jean, I said, Jean, we don't know if any money's going to come or if we're going to be able to afford to not ride in cars. But I think that since we're walking right now, I want to just keep doing that. And so I did. I decided I was just going to keep walking. And there's a philosopher, his name is Henry Bugbee, who comes out with something called the moment of obligation and experience. And the moment of obligation and experience, as he describes it, is there's something happening in our lives where we understand who we are because we have to take a certain action. We discover who we are through that action. And that action for me was to stop driving, to get out of the automobiles and just to keep walking. It was usually something, as Bugbee says, something that we see as impossible to really address. It was like something that if someone would see you doing it, they say, you can't, it's impossible for you to make a difference. Don't do that. That's just foolish. Well, those are the kinds of incidents that Henry Bugbee came up with, that these are the moments of obligation in our experience when we understand who we are and we are obligated to do this crazy thing. And for me, it was to give up riding in cars, living in California in 1972, to stop riding in automobiles and walk everywhere. And I'll tell you, my parents who lived back in Philadelphia, they thought I was crazy. And my friends, most of them who lived in California with me, they said, well, you know, John, we like you, but you're not going to make any difference. And my mother, I think she just thought I was a very stubborn person. She called it being hard-headed. But that once I started to do something, I might be very stubborn about it. And so I continued walking, and I called my parents up. I had to call them up to say that I had given up riding in cars, and my dad was really, you know, well, that's nice. Why didn't you do that when you were 16? Because I just always had to have a car and have a license and want to get around that way. I argued so much. I argued so much with my friends that I got tired of it, and I decided I was not going to speak for one day on my birthday, and that's I gave up speaking for one day on my birthday in February. And I realized from that not speaking for one day that I hadn't been listening to anyone, you know, and I listened just enough to think I knew what someone was going to say. And then I'd stop listening to them because I figured I knew what they were going to say. And I would just think about what I was going to say back to them to show them that I was smarter or they were wrong and I had the right answer. And so it was a kind of bittersweet moment when I realized that, of course, I didn't know everything. And I had been missing all these opportunities to learn from other people. The sweet part of that was that, well, I could do this another day, and I could do this another day, and eventually, I didn't speak for 17 years, and I didn't ride in motorized vehicles for 22 years. But it was during the walk across the United States where I stopped and went to school. Um, I was very fortunate to be accepted in schools, even though I didn't ride in cars, even though I didn't speak, uh, that professors uh, didn't mind. And in fact, they liked someone that they knew was listening, that I would listen. And I could do school in the classroom for about 2 years, and then I'd have to leave and I'd walk across to the next school. And so I did my undergraduate in Oregon, in Southern Oregon, in 2 years. And I did something called prior learning experience. Prior learning experience is what we learn out in the street, what we've done. Can we use that to, um, can we use that for credit for a formal education? And so I would climb a mountain and Mount Shasta, and I'd write about peak experiences, and I used that in psychology. I printed, I wrote articles. I used that for uh, creative writing. I played music. I used that for springs. I kept bees. I used that for natural history. I lived in the wilderness. I used that for the natural history of the Kalmiopsis. And so in 2 years, I had my degree, and I went on. My dad came and he'd always say to me, "We're so proud of you, son. You didn't ask for any money. But what are you going to do with a bachelor's degree if you don't ride in cars and talk?" And I did that all the way across the country, all the way up to Montana, where I got my master's degree. I did it to when I got to the Wisconsin, where I worked on my PhD, and and then I walked all the way to the East Coast, and I started to speak, and I had to start to speak because on my birthday, I always ask myself, is it time for me to speak? And the last birthday came, yes, it's time for me actually to say something, because I had been given this wonderful education from people all across the country, universities and colleges, and now I had learned something I thought that was really about environment, that I had to just stand up and say. And what I learned about environment was that, people are part of the environment, and everyone seemed to, yeah, we're part of the environment. We could get that. But if people were part of the environment, then how we treated each other was our first opportunity to treat the environment in a sustainable way, or even understand what we meant by sustainability. Yes, it's true that pollution and loss of species and habitat and all those things we traditionally think about environment are all important. We don't want to stop fighting for those, to end pollution, to end the loss of species and habitat. We don't want to stop fighting for that. But if people are part of the environment, and how we treat each other is really a fundamental issue. What it means is that how we treat one another is going to manifest in the physical environment around us. Manifest in the physical environment around us. And how it does that is in pollution, is in climate change, is in loss of species, loss of habitat, all those things, because of our treating each other in a way that exacerbates that manifests in that. So to me, environment became not only about pollution and loss of species and habitat and all those things, but it became about human rights and civil rights and gender equality and economic equity, and all the ways that we related as individuals, as a family, as a community, as states, as nations, as whole countries, how we communicate, how we act, how we treat one another. And that's what I had to say on the 20th anniversary of Earth Day. And that's when I spoke, and I said, thank you for being here. And my dad looked at me and he said, that's one, because he wanted me to now start riding and driving in cars. But I started speaking, and so that was one. And for me, it was, I didn't recognize my voice. I didn't know it was me that was speaking, because I hadn't heard myself in such a long time. And so I turned around to look to see who it was, and I realized it was me, and I started laughing, and my dad looked at me and he said, yeah, he really is crazy. Look at him up there laughing. My mother, she jumped up. She said, hallelujah, Johnny's talking. And I hope that I continue to speak, but I hope that I also continue to listen, because one of the things that I learned is that we learn so much when we listen to each other. So I'm going to end with my tune, which is the that was a different banjo, the Celebration of Life, and then I'm going to open up for our conversation. So thank you very much. And I, I hope that we could have a conversation, and I will try to answer questions. And yeah. So Anthony, will you moderate that, or how do we do that?
Yeah, let's do that. But also just feel like you can jump right in whenever you want, Dr. Francis. And it will be an honor to call on our Dean, Marcia Arunga, to ask you the first question. Thank you again, John, for your lovely performance and words. Please, Dean, go
Thank
ahead.
you.
Absolutely. Thank you. What rich words. And I actually did not think your outcome would be about humanity, and but it would be more about the discussions about pollution. So this is very delightful. But I go back to the very first curiosity about the vocal cords, and you said you laughed when you heard your voice. I first want to understand that, is this literal, that you never used your voice? You never spoke for those many years? And if that is true, what was that process? It must have been a very different sort of experience for you to begin to use your voice again.
Yes. Well, those are, you know, great questions. And there's a process, as you say. The first process began when I stopped speaking. And it's true. When I say I didn't speak, I didn't say a word. For 10 years. On the 10th anniversary, I called my parents because I love them so much. And I told them not to worry, because I was getting, you're going to see me in the newspapers and in the media, because I'm going to walk across the United States. And they were like, oh no, you're a Black man walking across the United States with a banjo, and you don't talk. Oh no, don't do that. Don't do that. But I told them not to worry. It's okay. And so the idea of not speaking is something that, I'm sure I've toyed with, reading the Vedanta and Eastern philosophies, and even Western philosophies and even I toyed with the idea of becoming a monk, and joining an order of Trappists. But then when I learned, it's so funny, because when I learned that they didn't speak, I said, oh, well, I'm not going to do that. So, but when I stopped speaking, um, I guess the most amazing thing happened to me, which is I began a life living in an altered reality, an altered reality. And how I can explain that is, when we do speak, we use all kinds of muscles and all kinds of nerves, and when we hear our voice, we get all kinds of feedback, and that does lots of things into our, and it goes into our mind, and how we sound to ourselves, and how we sound, how we speak out, it actually builds our reality for us. I mean, it becomes part of our reality. Now, when you change that, and I didn't know that, you have to understand, I didn't know this at the time I did this. This is something that serendipitous, what do you call that, serendipity, that I just discovered this. I got so high, no drugs. I got so so awake, that all I could say was that this was an alternate reality, because I didn't move, I didn't travel as fast as I used to. Um, Everything was at 3 miles an hour. That's the fastest, but it was so at a human speed, and then listening, and not projecting. And so my reality, it changed, and over the,
Huh.
for a month or so, I could still hear the chatter in my head. I don't know if you have this, that you just kind of play over conversations over, oh, he said that. Well, I could have said that. No, I'm going to say, and then you would play that again. And then there'd be just more chatter and more chatter and more chatter. And all that went away.
Wow.
All the chatter went away. And you would think that, well, gosh, this is a great sadhu from the East, man. It just happened. I mean, I didn't do anything special except to shut up. And so that process was that. And then there was the reverse process of starting to speak again. And was, well, one, I really needed to say something. I felt I should say something because I learned this and I didn't hear anyone, I wasn't reading it in the literature. I didn't hear anyone talk about it. And so I started to speak about how we treat each other. And just the sound of my voice, that I never heard me say those things. And I was just like, it made me laugh. It made me laugh. It made my mother happy. It made my mother, and made my parents, many people around me. And it made me happy. I'm glad I speak now. And so I don't, like, oh, I wish I didn't speak. No, it's a gift. It's a gift to be able to do this. And it's a gift to be able to hear each other and listen.
Do
So
you
thank
go
you
back?
very much for that.
Do you go back every now and then into silence? Do you do this do you go back to that?
Yeah, I do. Some days I sit, and some days I haven't recently, but I'll not speak for like 2 or 3 days. But I have two little, well, they're not little any longer, children. I'm married and I have a wife, and they, they'll go, oh, dad's doing a silent thing again. They'll go, oh, dad's not talking again. And I'm also a commissioner. I'm in the government here. I'm an elected official in my little village. It's a little village. I think there's about 1,000 people who live here year round. And so I have to go up and speak at the commissioners meeting. But I like to listen to when people come in and they have something to say, or they have a problem, or they want, I'm known as the person that will listen to them.
Thank you, Dr. John. Let's go now to our guest, Tara. Tara, please go right ahead with your question.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Francis. Thank you so much too for your introduction with the music and everything. I just want to thank you. I could feel like my feet almost moving underneath the earth along with you and the banjo. I think those flows in life are very important. And I could see when you would close your eyes that you knew your steps well. You treaded very fine footly. In your journeys, I wonder, it sounds like you've persevered with your education, and I find it very interesting with not speaking how you were able to get through learning, an undergraduate degree, a master's degree, a PhD. And I say that only having graduated from Evergreen, because I find sometimes that I'm very uncomfortable in my environments, but Evergreen has brought me out as an individual and forced me to address some of those issues, especially in seminar, where we're with our students and we're often asked to go through our flow of the readings and our understandings of the readings, and to talk about the readings as hopefully adults, and to understand other perspectives from other individuals. And then often we're called upon to do like a final project where you're up there and you're speaking. to your peers and your instructors. How were you able to navigate your education without speaking, especially when it came to the form of public communication? It sounds like you're very much involved in a lot of public relations, and I'm sure that that came at a later time. But through your education, how were you able to craft and design your education to fit your needs of not speaking, and also bringing together a very important topic, which is, you know, trying to elaborate on how much we as individuals affect our environment, and then that also affects our community, where a lot of people don't understand that. They don't realize that everything kind of comes around. We're all connected as one, and a lot of folks don't understand that. So I think what you've done is amazing, and I'm really interested to hear a little bit more, especially about graduating and going through different colleges and transferring on your journey. How did you make that happen? I guess I'm very curious.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a great question. You know, because magic, I did it through magic, but that's not how I did it. I think that in communication and anything, it's always an agreement with people, and so when I first went to Southern Oregon State College, it was, and said I wanted to, you know, to the registrar. And the registrar looked at me and went, "You want to go to school here?" And, you know, because I wanted to think and I wanted to study. Well, and so there's this agreement. And so the registrar said, "Well, you want to go to school here, but you know, you don't speak, and it's not because you can't speak, it's because you don't want to speak. It's a vow. And so we want to help you, but you have to go to each professor that you want to take a class from and make sure they understand that this is not a joke, that you're not trying to get out of work." Because this was something very new. No one ever showed up at their school and said they're not going to speak. And so the professors said, "You know, you can take my class, but you have to do all the presentations that everybody else does. I don't know how you're going to do it, but you have to figure that out." And so I would get, like, for example, a class in cartography. I would go to a cartography office in the town's cartography office, and I would take a tape recorder and I basically would make a radio show like NPR, and I would let them know through notes and acting out and mime, because that's mostly I communicated through mime and acting out. And I could write notes, and the guy at the guitar says, "Oh, so you want to learn about making maps?" And I'm recording this. And then he would say, "Well, come on, let's go to the cartography." And I would record the steps going to the cartography office, and we're talking to somebody else, and they would always, you know, I would always write down, take photographs, I would paint, and then I would make these elaborate presentations for class, which everybody came, people would come to all the classes, goes, "What's he gonna do now? You know, let's see what he's gonna do." And because it took me all of that involvement just to make these presentations, the subject matter really stuck with me. I mean, it was just a process. So I would do that to those classes that I needed to do presentations in. Sometimes it would just be, I would get up and do mime, and write on the board and paint and play music. All of those things I did to get through my undergraduate degree. And when I got into my master's, I ended up having to teach. I got a scholarship with a TA-ship, and I had to teach, be a TA for about 13 students after a large lecture. And this is when I really learned about communication, that I would make signs, and this is all based on a lecture that we had, but I would make signs. I would be going like so, and I think I use this in a TED talk. And the students would go around, what's he talking about? You know, what's he talking? And they would come up with different things. And sometimes they would come up with the exact thing that I was saying, or sometimes they would come up with something even better than what I was thinking. And sometimes they would come up with things that were like, well, that was not exactly, it was close enough. And I could agree with that. So I realized that communication was not so much you saying, this is what it is, and then, you know, the other person going, yes, that's what it is. Or teaching was, this is what it is, and the other person going, this is what you said it is, and that's what it is. It was more of an agreement that we agreed on something together. And a lot of times, because it came from the other person's own lips, they said, well, you mean such and such. And it came from their voice and the way that they would say it, that they were more than happy to accept that than if I had said the same exact thing. And it was just, and so it was a lot of learning, a lot of, if I figured if I was teaching and I wasn't learning, I wasn't really teaching. That's how I left class. I left that experience. If you're a teacher and you're not learning with your students, from your students, then you're probably not teaching either. So that went all the way through. By the time I got through my PhD, and I have to say, not every professor is happy with me. You know, it took, you know, some professors say, I've been waiting for this student for 30 years. And you know, some professors just, well, he's not like what I want. He says, yeah, but you know, he's studying environment and he walked here from California to our school. You know, and he didn't. So a lot of that, from walking, from listening, it kind of influenced people. It kind of made professors want to be part of this experiment, to be part of this this journey that we're all on. And I think that's, you know, I mean, how it really happened. I mean, I looked at how the financial aid is for your Evergreen Tacoma campus. It was like everybody can afford to go to school there. You know, anybody that wants an education can afford it. And I got to Montana, and they said to me, they said, do you have any, you know, it's the last day to register is tomorrow, and you have to start, you have to start this whole process over again. And they said, come back to the office in the environmental studies program. And they said, here's $100. You go and register for 2 credits, or 1 credit for reading and conference. And then we've agreed, and so have the professors agreed, to let you take their classes without registering for them, and then saving your grade until we figure out how to get the rest of the money so that you can register for that class, and then they'll just give you the grade that you got the year before or the semester before. And I got to tell you, I don't know of, except at your school, financial aid that worked like that. They're just, people just weren't, you know, it just wasn't, that wasn't the way they did. And they made me a resident of the state of Montana because I had been writing them and on my way to Montana for 2 years. I said, they said, so when are you going to get here? And I said, you know, I wrote, I'll be there in 2 years. And they said, oh, okay, we'll be waiting for you. You know, and it took me 2 years because I had to walk up to Washington State and up to Port Townsend, and I had to build a boat and row that across Puget Sound and sell the boat, and then walk to Montana, to Missoula. And it took me 2 years to do that. So all of that is I mean, touches people. You know, it's in itself its own communication. And so there were people who just people who wanted to help me do this, and there were people who said that you didn't want to help. But that's, you know, that's how life is. So don't worry about that. You know,
An incredible
focus.
journey, Dr. Francis. Can we go to one more question? Can
Sure.
Mia, I want to invite you and your family in to ask your question of Dr. John Francis Planetwalker. Go right ahead, Mia.
I was asking about like, did you ever forget any words after you started talking?
Oh man, that's a really good question, because I forgot lots of words. In fact, I forgot how to say them. And I can remember doing an interview for NPR. I can't even remember what the word was, but I said the word and I said, huh, is that how you say that? And he says, yes, that's how you say it. But I couldn't remember, and I couldn't remember if I was saying it correctly because I hadn't said it in such a long time. I had no idea. Yes, I did. I forgot lots of words.
Thank you. And would you tell us your name, please?
Oh, my name is Ryan.
Ryan, thank you. We are so lucky to have you with us. And you are so lucky to have your mom. She's a brilliant student, Ryan, just like I bet you are. Thank you for being with us. Well,
I gotta tell you, that's the first time someone asked me that question. That's a really good question. It's the first time someone asked. That is.
I'm so not surprised. Ryan would come up with that question. Yeah.
thank you for being inventive, Ryan. And thank you again for being with us. We'd like to now, Dr. John, go to our give back, where members of our learning community offer you thanks and appreciation for what you've brought to us tonight. It's a way of giving back to you. So, Dr. John, we ask that you not speak during the give back and just take in the bounty and thanks of our community. So who would like to go first?
I will. My name is Puanani. I was looking forward to this. I was just amazed by what you've done. And I do understand just a tiny bit about being silent. I've gone through bouts of that, of being silent at conferences. And I so hear you. I really, really appreciate that. When I remained silent for long periods of time, people literally thought I was mute. And it was really rather interesting at a conference I had attended years ago. And their reaction was, I thought you were mute, but you talk. And I thought, of course I talk. you didn't have anything I wanted to engage with, so why would I engage with you? And so I find you fascinating in that once we quiet ourselves, we hear the chatter in our mind, that internal committee can just, it's nonstop. It goes on, that internal committee, until I think what I'm hearing from you today, and I so thank you for this, is that if you're quiet long enough, that quietness takes over the committee, our internal committee. And that's my takeaway from you, listening to you, sharing with us. I so appreciate being here because I was looking forward to this. I thought, how could anyone choose to be silent for so long? And you did, and I understand, and it totally makes sense. You allowed yourself to hear, to really hear. No judgment, no nothing, just hear and listen. And I really appreciate your sharing with us today. Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you.
And thank you, Punani, for your give back. And thank you, as always, for your dedication to the Tacoma campus and to our students. You've helped so many of our students get into the MPA program in your role with the MPA program. So thank you for your help. I'm now going to go to Akuye. And if there is anyone else who'd like to offer Dr. John Francis Planetwalk a give back, please go ahead and raise your hand. Akuye, please go ahead.
Hey family, how's everybody doing tonight? Dr. John, this is powerful to be able to allow us to learn the power of silence, the power to be able to quiet ourselves long enough to be able to hear and discern and be able to engage even in silence. You know, when you began to speak and share your experience, it took me back to years ago when I first started doing experiential learning and how the adults that went on that training were silenced during the entire training and how difficult it was. The challenge that we all had not to interrupt, not to engage, not to interject into that learning environment of silence. And you just brought that to life, the value of that and the power of that. I'm so thankful. And we here at Evergreen, we appreciate. This needs to be taught. It is something that I think we need to enter into because everything is just so chaotic and so loud in our lives that have interrupted our being, and to be able to cultivate the quieting and silencing of ourselves long enough to be empowered to hear from others is amazing. I thank you, our Evergreen family. Thank you for all that you've given us and all that you've shared with us. And we just give you all the honor that's due for this tremendous work that you have shared with us.
Everybody's gonna come back.
Akuye, thank you so much for your beautiful and very true give back. I now want to turn to you, Dr. Arunga, for your give back to Dr. John. Please go right ahead.
Dr. John, I just want to acknowledge you as a courageous, bold decision maker, someone who really set an example. You took your passion to the highest of heights, and you set an example through the way you lived. And I also think that there have to be some maybe sacrifices on the part of yourself as a Black man, you were able to really put yourself in what I would think is harm's way at times and navigate a something you believed in. And I also really appreciate that at the end of the day, we must care for our environment, but first and foremost, through each other and through our care for human beings. I think that's your resounding message tonight. And I think I really want to praise that and honor that as a beautiful way of living. So thank you very much for your words and thoughts.
And thank you, Dean Arunga, for your wonderful give back. There are a couple of give backs in the chat that I want to read from Professor Wenhong Wang. She says, Dr. Francis, your actions speak louder than words. And Candy Bauman says, Dr. Francis, I love your point about using cards and making space for students to hear their own thoughts and ideas. Such a powerful approach to teaching and learning. I also value the many ways that you have found to express your ideas and dissent, your beautiful music, how you've used your body for expression, and the talking that you did with your feet are just so powerful. Thank you for that give back, Wenhong Wang and Candy Bauman. Beth Mason says, thank you, Evergreen, for sharing Dr. Francis's presence and insights with the community. Camila Constable says, I just want to thank you because so often the message around humans and the environment is that we are separate from it, that we are not part of it, and it's often people don't even think about how the way they treat each other affects the environment as well. Thank you so much, Beth Mason and Camila Constable. And I just want to finish up with my own give back. Give back to you, Dean Arunga. Thank you for creating this virtual lecture series space. Give back to the Resilience Studies Consortium and John Hausdorfer. Give back to all of the folks that joined us on this, the final virtual lecture series of the year, and especially give back, shout out, and warm, big hug to you, Dr. John Francis, for being with us. I was thinking the other night about what are the values that we need to change this world fundamentally. And there's a lot of analysis and thinking we need. And one of my longtime comrades used to say that our strongest and most important weapon is our mind. But in addition to our mind, we need revolutionary values like the ones that you've offered us tonight. For movements and for communities and for revolutionary transformation to happen, we need to learn to listen to each other and be part of each other's lives in new ways. And finding how to have those kinds of relationships is one of the puzzles it's going to take to make the biggest changes that we need to stop this global heating, to stop the kinds of police brutality that we see, to stop the inequality that we see. So thank you, Dr. John Francis, Planetwalk, for being with us. And we'll give you the final word, Dr. John, if you'd like to say any last things.
Well, thank you so much for the give back. That's going to take me to new places. And just being with you this evening has taken me to a new place. And especially want to thank you, Anthony and Dean, for putting this together, but for your give back and for everyone's give back. It's just been overwhelming. It's overwhelming. And I hope that we can take this community that we are and take that out into the world and share that and grow that, because I believe that it's one step at a time and one person at a time. As we touch each other, we touch everyone.
Thank you, John. And Punani also says, our environment is what heals us. Go back to the earth. When I am at my deepest, I must go to the earth. I so get this big time. And Marla German, final word for the evening, says, Dr. Francis, you are absolutely delightful. Thank you for making our shared humanity the center of your discussion. And with that, we'll say good night, everybody. Thank you so much for being with us in this virtual lecture series. Thank you so much, Dr. John Francis, Planetwalker.